present. Immediately following the presentation, members will have a total of 5 minutes for questions. I will show time cards with various intervals to indicate the remaining time. I will stop any speaker who receives the maximum time limit. No questions, comments, cell phones, or picture taking will be permitted from the audience. The audience will only be permitted to apply following the question and answer period. The audience is banned from any material that bears the name or symbol of the meeting members. We ask that the audience makes it through immediately following the question and answer period. Competitors may begin when you're ready.
Well, hello and welcome to Mr. Wilkinson and the rest of the owners and leadership team at Jetstream Helicopters. My name is Aaron, this is Haley, this is Josh, and we are from Impact Consulting, and we are very excited today to recommend to you some solutions for your company going forward into the future. Before we get too far into the presentation, I'd like to draw your attention to this statement. This is your current pilot recruitment statement taken directly from your company materials, so I'm sure you're all familiar with it. The main thing I want to point out with this is that this statement doesn't speak to the culture and to what you give back to your pilots at Jetstream. It doesn't speak to what type of an organization you are and what sets you apart from other helicopter service industries, service companies in the industry, which there's an increasing number of. So really looking at that and looking forward, I want this statement to resonate with you throughout our presentation and throughout our recommendation. So we want to take you from a company that's losing employees, scrambling to hire new people, and really worrying about meeting those new contracts that you have coming in, and develop you into a company that's that has an engaged and loyal workforce, that's really aligned with the values and those founding principles that Jetstream was founded upon. You're a relatively young company, and you do have some strong values, and we want that to link with the employees that you hire that are with your company. And how are we going to do this? Through a culture that captures. So through doing a thorough needs assessment of your current employees, and redefining your corporate culture and integrating it into your workplace. So taking a step back and looking at some of the issues that determined us to go with this recommendation. Currently you have some poor selection methods at Jetstream. What we mean by that is just that misalignment of what you actually want out of a pilot. It's very generic. It could really work with any helicopter company, and that's actually getting new employees that aren't necessarily great fits for the company, and that's why they're leaving after short periods of time. There's also poor employee loyalty, so employees feel disconnected. They feel that after they've worked for you for a short period of time, they get a better opportunity to go work somewhere else. And lastly, there's a disconnect between management and employee values. So when looking at your company, we did see that you had really strong core values and founding principles, but those are really only known by the owners and the senior leadership team, some of your head pilots. Your newer pilots and newer employees coming in aren't aware of these values and don't live them on a day-to-day basis. And so these are all leading to poor retention, which is really costing your company money and a lot of stress, and that's what we hope to solve today.
So we've completed an industry, company, and consumer analysis of your current organization at Jetstream here. In terms of your industry, there's 15 new startups. That means this is a really rapidly growing industry, which means it's very highly competitive. Now, the risk to this is that there's a difficulty in retaining employees, especially employees that are not loyal, as my colleague Aaron had mentioned. They're going to choose the best organization that offers the best competitive wages and competitive benefits available. So through a culture that captures, we'll mitigate this, and we'll show you how we're going to do this later on. As for a company, we want to form a company. Your company is built on strong company values of hard work, dedication, and your love for the mountains. This is really important. You have that passion in this helicopter transportation industry, and we really want to foster that going forward into the long term. However, there is a risk. If you select the wrong individuals to join your organization that don't fit with this passion that you have that started this very successful industry, or company, sorry, that could be a big red flag going into the future of your organization. Looking at your consumers, you have 3 main consumers: your commercial consumers, emergency services, and your heli adventure offerings that are very successful as well. However, there's a risk. There's been implications that your staff have poor bedside manners, and in the service industry, this could be very problematic. Looking at the criteria we've determined in evaluating our alternatives, first, we want to look at something that's timely. You have 4 months right now in which your current staffing requirements are feasible and will last you in this next 4-month time. However, this is a very short amount of time, and we need a plan that is feasible and ready to be implemented right now. That will also carry on into the long term. Something that is feasible, as I had already mentioned, something that your company, as a small startup, is able and capable to do. something that is future-oriented. So we want to look at something that will last you beyond this first year of operations, something that will last you 5 years going on, 10 years going forward, and something that you can maintain as Jetstream Helicopter Limited, and something that fits with your values. You're so dedicated to what you do in this helicopter transportation industry, and we want you to carry on with that, and we're going to show you how we're going to do that today. So looking at some of the alternatives. First, a compensation and benefits review. So really starting with some workplace surveys and some exit interviews, find out why your staff left or what they're interested in, and creating comprehensive benefits and wages to complement these. This could be an option, however, we feel this is not really feasible as a small startup and could potentially lead to very high costs in the future. Second alternative is to focus recruitment of entry-level pilots. So this would really consist of targeting those pilot schools and really starting at the beginning to maintain that relationship and create that loyalty. However, this isn't very timely. Do we see this being feasible in the first 4 months of operations? No, and therefore we don't feel this is a proper plan to go forward with. Increase your foreign recruitment as the third alternative. Now, foreign recruitment has worked for you in the past. However, as Impact Consulting, we feel there are many uncertainties with foreign recruitment. Will they stay in the future? How will they react once they come to Canada and work for your organization? These uncertainties have led to many risks that make this plan unfeasible. And lastly, our last alternative is that employee needs assessment and culture development. So really, to find out what your employees want and what your organization wants, and to create a culture that will retain them leading on into the future. And ultimately, we find this the proper alternative to go forward with. So looking at our recommendation, we want you, Jetstream, to create a culture that captures. And how we're going to do that is by first defining that corporate culture. How are you going to define that corporate culture, It's really a marriage between top management and your employees. Culture fits between all levels of an organization. And by creating a successful corporate culture, we believe that you will be able to mitigate that problem of retention in the long term. Looking at our second part, to enhance your selection methods. Really finding those people that fit with your organization. Who are your Jetstream employees out there in the applicant pool, and how are you going to attract them and select them to come to into your organization? And lastly, to link your culture and workplace practices. This being the most important point, to really drive and communicate that culture that will help bring your organization growth and success in the future.
So Josh mentioned the first step of this plan is to define that corporate culture. We recognize corporate culture isn't something that's made in a day. It's something that is developed over time, but it's important you start now so you can be competitive. First, involving that you as senior management, as well as the owners, discuss the core values. We know what they are provided in the document. However, there may be some other things that your company's now developed into you want to include, or maybe you've changed or grown. But it's important that you're all on the same page, because any plan starts with top management, and without your full backing and foundation, or without your full backing and agreement on it, it will not be a successful plan. We recommend hiring a third party to actually gather research by doing focus groups. We expect that for your 75 employees, we recommend holding 12 groups, to actually sit down, having them divided based on more of their departments, so the pilots together, your mechanics together, and really having those conversations in a comfortable atmosphere with someone they don't feel any pressure to hold back or say something that may cause repercussions if there's something in the organization that they, maybe you're unsure about. As well, you do have 2 people that are leaving in the short term right now. We recommend conducting exit interviews. They're a very excellent way to sit down as one of your HR professionals, sit down with those employees and speak to them frankly and openly and ask them kind of what's going on, why are you leaving, because we don't feel that you really have the full story yet based on the information provided. And then based on these really fruitful discussions, forming kind of a charter or mantra that reflects the type of workplace that your employees can expect and one that you really want to see your company grow with. And why is this really important? Because a thorough investigation is really critical in getting that information before you move forward. Because if you don't have the full full story, you're going to end up taking steps that are going to set you back. And engaging those employees in that process of determining who are you as Jetstream, as an organization, what sets you apart, what draws employees, and what retains your employees, what makes them happy, that's going to develop those relationships and build those connections between management and your employees. The second step of our implementation is to enhance those selection methods based on this information you've now been provided with. So ensuring that the interview questions actually assess fit. Fit being, does this candidate fit within the organization? Their behavioral-based interview questions are something that you should consider adding on top of just checking for qualifications, as Aaron mentioned earlier on. In addition, redesigning those recruitment materials to reflect this new culture, something that they can look at and they can kind of get a sense of who you are as Jetstream and what sets you apart from those competitors. And why is this important? Well, we've really identified that attraction is not the issue, it's selection. It's bringing in people who are going to fit with you and they're going to stay with you and they're going to enjoy their stay in your company. Based on the numbers you provided, we really saw this as ringing true, especially since it is a very competitive industry and you have a kind of a constant outflux of a few employees over shorter terms. And selecting employees who are fit are obviously more likely, they're going to perform their best, they're going to enjoy their job, and they're going to stay with the organization, which is going to save you so much money. So the third part of our plan is to link that culture with the actual tactical, concrete workplace practices that HR especially practices. So for example, a value that through your discussions, through those focus groups, you may come across flexibility as being something, maybe in terms of hours. That's something that could be important to your employees, and it seems to be something important based on the information. So maybe recommend changing the selection method so that upon interviewing them, they can rank, this schedule works best for my life. I can get that workplace balance. I can run my other business. Those are the types of things that you'll be able to actually implement. And then for workplace practices, you can then execute it by offering the variety of terms of employment. Maybe temporary works best for you and these employees in the summer. And also as well the different schedules, as I mentioned. Another value which we already know is so important to you is kind of creating that family atmosphere that unfortunately we don't quite see coming out yet. So a selection method that you can use to support this is evaluating the potential candidates, kind of looking at their personality. So having two people in the interview to gain a sense of who this person is, are they going to have those interpersonal skills we need? Are they going to excel in this job? And even by tactically having more social events, maybe bringing more of your staff together, creating kind of a more cohesive culture and a team that will be willing to have flexible shifts with each other and do those types of things. And why is this step so important? Well, employer brand is reflected in the day-to-day corporate culture and those activities that your excellent staff carry out day to day. And if their expectations based on those materials, based on what you've changed, based on those discussions that you've had amongst yourselves and with your employees, if they see actual changes and that mantra reflects how they feel and what they need, they will be retained. It's going to drive that engagement, it's going to promote that loyalty to solve your problem, and it's going to create retention. An important part of kind of managing this new introduction of kind of a more set charter of what your company is all about is having first a reorientation day so that all staff members can come together and you can unveil this excellent new kind of way that your workforce is kind of description on how you work together and what they want and what you're providing and what they're providing you in return. And also getting that feedback or explaining how that feedback has influenced that charter that you've now implemented. Because if they provide all this feedback and they don't see any reflection in this charter, they're not going to be happy. Informing employees that it does have a long-term focus. So as your employees grow with you in the organization over time, that charter may slightly change over time. They may not need flexibility as much. They may need something else. So reviewing that on an ongoing basis, supplemented by surveys to do this. So a quick timeline of what to expect within that 4-month time frame that's very important is first having that senior management meeting and discussing your 3 core values, and then if there's anything else in there that you think might be important. And also hiring a third-party analyst to conduct those focus groups that will be hosted within that month. Within 2 months, also holding, or that is actually when you're holding the focus group, so you need time to arrange all of that. And then within 3 months, planning that integration. What are those tactical things that you can apply to your HR practices and execute? And then unveiling that charter and your new practices through that reorientation day. And then lastly, within 3 months, implementing those new workplace practices in full, as well as selection methods.
Perfect. So looking at the cost of this plan, we've outlined a few things that are involved in the implementation. First off is those employee focus groups. So we did take into account the lost time of the employees. We're recommending that each group is about 4 hours long, so a half day, and also the cost of hiring that third-party interviewer. And that would be a total for the focus groups of $22,000. The rebranding of the recruitment selection tools would be about $3,000. So just your interview tools that you're using, updating your website to reflect this new corporate culture would be about $3,000. The reorientation day, you're looking at $3,500 for a total cost of $36,000. I'd just like to point out that $36,000 is about half of the cost of turnover of one pilot. So you can see that this is successfully implemented within 4 months, and you reduce even turnover of one pilot, which we know it will reduce even more. You're actually going to see a benefit immediately. So in terms of some impacts that you'll actually see on an organizational level and a financial level, on an organizational level, stronger employee loyalty. So because you have employees that know what they're expecting when they come into Jetstream and they see it reflected on a day-to-day basis, because this culture is really what your employees practice, they were involved in the discussion of it, so there will be that linkage between incoming employees and what's currently practiced in the workplace. They will feel a stronger loyalty to the company, which in turn will result in increased retention. That is, once again, the main goal of this full recommendation is to increase retention. We feel that comes from that culture first, and then branches into the other functions of the organization. And that's why this culture piece and this corporate charter really needs to be revisited on an annual basis and establish new values if you need to, modify certain values, establish new practices to go along with them. So it is an ongoing process. You can't just create a culture and leave it for decades. It needs to be revisited. Also, this really goes beyond profits for your employees, but they'll get a fulfilling career because the charter that you're developing is linked to what they want in a job. And so they're actually going to feel fulfilled in their work. They're not going to have to go seek other employment, cause stress in their own lives. They're going to see that the work that they're doing and the company that they're working for really is connected to who they are as an individual. And then lastly, they'll be satisfied, engaged, and more productive, which we believe will also help with looking at some of those new contracts that you're seeking. You do have a lot of work coming in. One of your main concerns is that you don't have the people to perform it, but with a more engaged workforce, with better retention and attraction tools, we feel that you will be able to better pursue these contracts that you're looking at. Another financial impact is that reduced cost of turnover. We didn't have exact turnover figures for your company, but we know that within the last month or so, 2 employees have said that they are looking to leave the organization. So we feel that with this charter being involved, and with employees really being able to express why they're leaving, which we feel hasn't been done in the past. Even your pilot that wrote that email was unsure of why the employees were leaving. He said he didn't think it was benefits. He didn't think it was the wages he was getting, wasn't really sure. We feel like you need to do a thorough investigation to really discover that. So some risks that we see in this plan, one is that those vacant positions are not filled in the short term. So we're not ignoring the fact that you do have a hiring demand right now. Our plan, we feel, can be implemented within 4 months. That first version of your charter can come up within 4 months. However, if it's not out in time and you can't fill those 4 spots with that new charter, what we want is for you to look at foreign recruitment, which your pilot has said he has some leads. He feels that those 2 to 4 spots can be filled. So we feel like this is a good short-term solution. And then ongoing in future hiring needs, you can use your new charter and your new selection tools for that. Another risk is that current employees maybe don't feel that they're connected to the newly defined processes, that they don't follow them. This is a risk with integrating a new culture and doing that culture change. I think one thing that's really key about this is that the management is important here, the risk management, and that's why we involved your employees in the definition of the charter. It can't come just from the owners and senior management. They really need to be integrated as key stakeholders, and so we feel that if they are integrated, they will feel more connected and will follow the practices outlined. So in conclusion, we saw this issue of poor retention of talent as the main thing that's facing your organization right now and causing a lot of worry. Our recommendation is to do that thorough employee needs assessment, do some focus groups, and integrate a new corporate culture and a corporate charter. And the impacts of this, the first one is that increased retention. Employees feel more loyal to Jetstream. They feel like they have a purpose in the organization that they will fulfill in their career. They're going to be a more satisfied and engaged workforce. And lastly, you'll have a reduced cost of turnover because of all these together. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and open the floor to any questions you might have.
That concludes the presentation. We now have a question and answer period.
I have a question about this, your selection. So once you've gone through your cultural changes and you have this new charter and you have the pilots in front of you for the interview, I can see how that could work. But how did you get them there in the first place? Because industry-wide, it is difficult to find pilots that meet just the general standards.
I think one thing that you can look at, this plan really speaks to the retention piece and to, once they're there, having them come into the organization. We do see foreign recruitment as a really good strategy for getting pilots to come in. We didn't want to focus on that because it's something that you're already doing, but we do see this plan as being able to supplement those current practices. So we think foreign recruitment is one. We also mentioned partnering with other institutions, but we think that you really need to define that culture first and define your selection tools, then really focus on advertising yourself as an employer, advertising what's different about you and why people want to come work for you.
You guys have taken a long view and focusing on being employer friendly. So for our management team, is there anything that you think we need to do right now on the attraction and selection side? Or are you pretty confident the status quo on that? Yes, will be short while you're doing long-term fix?
Yes, this is certainly more of a long-term based plan. We do see it being feasible to complete it within 4 months. And currently, in handling your short-term needs of needing 2 to 4 pilots, we do feel that through foreign recruitment, we will be able to successfully do that. However, with that information on those discussions within those 4 months, within the focus groups, you will be able to start getting some information to change even those simpler materials for recruitment, for advertising for recruitment purposes. And I think that by making a more invigorated statement and something that really reflects and shows your passion for this industry, you will be able to bring people in.
You started your presentation there by highlighting our pilot recruitment statement. Do you think some immediate changes need to be made to that statement to make your successful?
I think it's very important that my colleague Aaron mentioned. With the statement, it's all about technical qualifications, and these are just general technical qualifications with any pilot recruitment. We think we want you as an organization to add in what you value as an organization, so that really that passion for mountain flying. With something like heli adventure skiing or emergency services, which you're quite heavily involved in these industries, it takes, as we like to call, thrill seekers to join the organization. And nowhere in that recruitment statement does it mention or allude to the fact that you invite thrill seekers on your staff. And we think properly kind of alluding to these factors that contribute to your overall organization would be very important.
Question on going back to this with the immediate recruitment needs. And I understand your argument for your position to be that you know, see this 4 months of you need to form recruitment. But what was your time frame or your suggested time frame? Is it go foreign right now or wait 4 months to see how long it takes us to get our culture sorted out?
Well, currently those pilots have only given their notice that they're leaving, and so we see that hiring need as in the 2 to 4 month time frame. So not necessarily a need today. That's why we went with that 4 month time frame. We feel that hiring 2 pilots won't be a huge issue. And in terms of also the short-term focus, I think that once you make those changes to your company policies that reflect that charter, because the charter is what your employees have already determined on their own, we feel that those changes will keep them as well. So that those future needs of maybe 6 months with more employees quitting won't be there because you've actually done a needs assessment, you've seen what your employees currently want, and you can make those immediate changes within that 3 to 4 month period that will actually make them stay throughout the year. And then once again, keep revisiting this and keep redefining your recruitment tactics as well.
So why did you recommend hiring foreign workers rather than going and poaching from one of the other countries?
We recommend that it's really important to develop your people and develop your culture, because it goes, coaching would not be a practice that something you want to rely on. It's more about focusing on your people and figuring out how can we to make our selection methods hire for fit. So you can do that within that time frame, and I believe that you will be able to without doing practices